there's even more proof, of course, that at the very least, the bare minimum, Kamala Harris is not black. It isn't just Janet Jackson. Funny who the media picks on and who the media stays away from. Because Judge Joe Brown has the credentials. This is a person that they know is intelligent, has had a talk show on TV, I guess you could say a judge show on TV for a very long time. And many of you guys were emailing me clips of him on the show discussing the fact that he knew Kamala's father and that he just simply knows that the family is not black. Take a listen to this first clip before we jump into the second one.
She was everybody's favorite Hindu Indian prosecutor and attorney general and senator, and now she becomes black. But, you know, I met her daddy, fine gentleman, Professor Harris. And the problem with her being black is Professor Harris says he's Caucasian, mixed Irish and Hindu. He doesn't have any black ancestors, but his Irish ancestors owned a lot of slaves in Jamaica and had them to work on plantation. So if mama is on the birth certificate listed as a Caucasian, daddy says he's a Caucasian Hindu and has no black ancestors, how did she get to be black?
I mean, the math is not mathing. How did she become black? It doesn't make sense, okay? It only makes sense if you stole the identity of the help, which is so sick, so twisted, so diabolical, so offensive that we demand a response to this. Like I said, if a single black person is okay with this and votes for her because the media simply decided to make her black, to essentially wave a little Harry Potter wand and go, oh, okay, we just need you to be black because we need those black votes.
Think, Neville, think.
Ridiculous!
Right? And you're okay with that? You should really re-examine your life. You should deeply, spiritually search within yourself to determine what is wrong with you, that you would allow this sleight of hand to compel you to vote for this woman, despite her horrific record, by the way, of locking up black men. Who is this woman? Two parents that were committed communists. Who is this woman? And that's not all Judge Joe Brown had to say in the matter of Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
And the birth certificate that she has is interesting because the confusion comes from a mistake. On the birth certificate, it lists the mother's race as Caucasian, national origin into India, and religion Hindu. For the father, it does not list national origin. It does not list religion. It does not list anything about that, but where it says race, they put national origin in Jamaica by mistake. Now, if you've ever been to Jamaica and you go over to St. Elizabeth Parish, you see all the high, bright, and white that live in Jamaica. So I've got a good friend retired from law enforcement. He has a white wife, blonde-haired, blue eyes, but she was born in Jamaica. Her parents were born in Jamaica. One's blonde and blue-eyed, the other one's red-haired and gray-eyed. And they happen to be related to the King of England because they are aristocrats in England, but they were born in Jamaica. It's not unusual. You're not black just because you're from Jamaica, and they have a whole lot of white people that never left, and their ancestors owned a lot of slaves. The Maroons went up into the hill country and got themselves free back in the 1840s, but, you know, other than that, it is what it is in Jamaica. So just because you're from that country does not mean you are of the black race. So the problem is why don't you go get your daddy to give you an affidavit that you have a black ancestor? And since the only possible claim you have is through your great-grandmother, who he says was a Hindu house servant, that just happens to be swarthy, where'd you get your blackness from? See, you're faking it again.
Hindu house servant is what they are alleging that Iris was. And I am telling you, the fact that I just picked up on that in a vibe in a picture, do not tell me women do not have good gut instincts. I was just like, there's just something about the photo. It just wasn't loving. It felt very much like the help who got close with the kids but didn't want to be too close to the kids because, you know, you never know when the mom's going to get upset because you're too close to the kids, kind of a kid situation. You know what I mean? Another email that was received. And at first I was like, okay, you know, the headline in the email was Kamala Harris is German Jewish. Let's pull up that chart again so you guys can follow along. Again, we know that that Donald Harris, when he wrote his piece, kind of says that beyond the Miss Chrissy generation, that's his Miss Iris. That's his Miss Irish generation, that he doesn't know anything about his family ancestry. So it sort of stops at Joseph Alexander Harris, which is kind of weird. Well, this guy is saying, no, I have figured this out. Actually, we do know who the father was of Joseph Alexander Harris. He had the same name, the first name and last name, but his middle name was different. It was Bravo Harris. Now, if you go in this book to Appendix L, listed under the, quote, cemetery of former English and German congregation, you see, in loving memory of Joseph Bravo Harris, okay? Born November 2nd, 1855, died on the 20th of September, 1894. Joseph Bravo, by the way, had a brother, and his name was Michael Ralph Bravo, and he is registered as a Freemason in Jamaica. This guy shows me this, and here it is. You can actually see the logs of the Freemason, the Freemasons signing their names there. He is registered in 1908, and that particular lodge that he is registered in, it makes him an English Freemason. And that is considered the oldest Masonic lodge in the world. It was established as an underground movement to support the Whigs. Now, a lot of you guys asked me questions in the comment section. You're like, Candace, speak more about Freemasonry. And that is just, that would be an entire series. It's relevant. You should learn about Freemasonry. It is definitely, like I said on past episodes, it was an underground movement of people that were trying to overthrow empires, trying to overthrow kings, and they were meeting in secret society, like meeting in these Freemasonry lodges to discuss how to do that. And then of interest is that Michael then settled in Canada. We find him, that Freemason, on a ship manifest. So what's interesting here is we're starting to see the coordinates. We're starting to see a map here of the same places, starting all the way here back in the 1800s in Kamala's alleged family to now, presently, right? We were starting to look at logs, and we know that they spent, the Harris family spent time in Canada. We know that they spent time in New Orleans. We know that they spent a lot of time in Jamaica. And so this person did indeed, Michael, settle in Canada, which would put the Harris family in Canada. We also know, by the way, we haven't yet gotten to her mother, but that she also worked in Canada, was in Canada a lot. So there may be reasons for that, but it is of interest that Canada keeps popping up in our research. So as this guy is kind of going through all of this and speaking about how, again, this book, A Record of the Jews in Jamaica, is the title of it. As he's speaking through all of this, he speaks about why it was that so many Hebrew residents in the St. Anne parish began converting or marrying. And what is of interest regarding Joseph Bravo Harris is the fact that, look at this, the Hebrews resident from the same book in St. Anne Parish assembled for divine worship on Yom Kippur at the home of Joseph Harris at Brownstown. I was credibly informed that the room Harris appropriated for the service, which was during his lifetime, was never used for any other purpose. Harris was an English Jew. He came here from New Orleans, Louisiana. Again, another coordinate that just keeps popping up. And then the author writes, I have not been able to ascertain the provision for worship that was made in any of the other parishes. St. Elizabeth must, however, have had organized worship during the 18th century. It is very pleasing to record that at no time since the Reform movement assumed practical form during the 19th century has religious persecution in the island reached so acute a stage as to at all render it possible for the setting up a Reform congregation, as was the case in some of the neighboring islands, thus to save many on this account from leaving their ancestral religion. So he's just kind of going through all of this, speaking about how some people left the faith, and he says that he's inclined to believe that they did that because they just didn't like the rabbinical Judaism with its unyielding laws and just kind of wanted to marry into other families and become Christian. But that is of interest here. So we're speaking now about Joseph Bravo Harris, and he believes that this is the father of Joseph Alexander Harris. So right in the chart you're seeing, we don't have a picture for him, but we have a blank spot for him if this is if this is correct. He is saying that this would of course be known to the Harris family because Harris was a big name in St. Anne Parish. She would obviously know that her heritage dated back to this. She would obviously know that she had Jewish relatives, which again just keeps leading us to this question of why hide any of this? This is not something that the world would be upset about or angry about. So I just don't understand why we are hiding certain relatives, pretending not to know certain ancestral things. What is the explicit aim of that?